Welcome to this episode of Estate Agency X. On today's episode, I'm talking to Louise Breakey from Breakey and Co up in the north of England, Wigan. She's come down here to talk to me because she's had an estate agency for around about 10 years. But for the last 2 years, she's been doing things very differently and it's paying off for her big time. So I wanted to dig into what led to that change and how they went about making it, some of the problems they ran into and what the end result was. So Louise, thanks very much for coming in.
Thanks for inviting me.
No problem at all. Before we get into things, are you all right just to give the listeners a little bit of background on yourself, how you got into the business, that sort of thing?
Yeah. So I got into the business when I was 21. I bought my first house and the estate agent rang me up at the day of completion and said, come and get your key and would you like a job? Because of how I'd handled it. And that's how I accidentally fell into it. And that was 34 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how long have you had your own estate agency for now?
We're just going into our 10th year now.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So the reason I wanted to get you on the podcast is your business has been through quite a big transformation over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And I wanted to dig into that a little bit. So estate agency in general has been pretty much of a muchness for as long as I can remember, which spans over the last 30 years. And I'm guessing your business followed that same format to begin with.
Exactly the same, yeah.
So what's started to change with your business? Before we get into what started to change, what made you start considering that there might be another option, or how did you stumble into, starting to make a change?
I think initially we were doing a lot of stuff and it was wasted energy. We were ringing all of our potential vendors. We were, we'd ring 100 in a day and we might get one that day, we might not. And I always said there's got to be a different way of doing it. I had a chat to my husband one day and I said, imagine if you could pick and choose who to ring. Imagine if there was something whereby we could actually see if they were active. And he kind of said, well, that's never going to happen. But I felt like there had to be something else. There had to be. And then one day I was on YouTube and I was just watching something that you were talking about, and it sounded like bingo, you'd hit the jackpot. And I thought, hang on, this can't be right, surely not. And when I looked into it, that's exactly what you guys were offering, and that initial 20-minute video changed the way I looked at everything from then on in to now.
Okay, so, but let's slow that down a minute and let's say, like, right, okay, so you've found something where you think to yourself, like, wow, this is exactly what I'm looking for. The reality of taking an existing business that doesn't work that way and trying to get it to a place whereby you're going to work completely differently is a bit of a minefield.
Yes.
So let's slow it down and start talking about that. So you've stumbled across this way of working where you think to yourself, like, I think this is the way we need to go. What were the first steps in, I don't know, the first problems that you started to find, if you like?
I suppose the first problem was really getting your team on board with it, because it was very, it can't be, that can't work, that will never work because of this and this. And I knew there was loads of minefields, and I just, in my heart, I just wanted to investigate it a little bit further. And when we first started, I felt as if it was like when we first started, because we had to do all the groundwork again. But this time I think it was just me, and then I had to convince the team that it was going to work. And I think that was half the battle, really, because if they didn't buy into it, then no matter how much I was loving it, we're going to get nowhere. And slowly but surely, before I even contacted Life Cycle, I started speaking to people about, I read your book.
Right.
I started speaking to people about that scenario and about, imagine what we could do with this data if there was something really clever, a magic wand. And people were kind of they weren't that interested, but they could see that I was really passionate about it. And I think that's when I started changing ever so slightly myself, and testing the water really. And I think we're very habitual. You know, we were doing things because it's always been done that way. But I knew there had to be an easier way.
Yeah.
I just felt like we were using a scattergun approach all the time.
Yeah, but your staff, on the people in your team, obviously, you know, it's not unusual for the owner of a business to regularly have crazy madcap ideas, right? And for the team to get a bit of fatigue with that and sort of like, oh, here he goes again off on another tangent. So there must have been a part of them that was a bit like that, like, okay, well, let Louise have her fun and this will blow over and we'll just continue doing what we're doing. Like, we're doing the real work and she's in cloud cuckoo land, right? Then there must have been something whereby it sort of stepped up a level whereby it became a bit more real, and either their sort of resistance would become a bit more real, or I don't know, what comes after that then, whereby you suddenly start thinking like, we're actually going to go down this road. And you don't have to name names or anything, but there must have been someone or even more than one person that was like not too happy about doing that.
Yeah, I think back in the early days when we had no clients, no houses, nothing, we were doing a lot of letters via a company, and it was going to people that were already on the market. And so I think because of that, we were getting really good traction with that. And people were saying, you know, what can you do differently? And we were explaining what we do differently. And it was that where I thought, hang on a minute, this is targeting the right sort of people. There has to be something that's going to target the right sort of people. And that's when I started investigating a little bit more about what you guys did. And at one time I thought, in my head, it seemed too good to be true. I then spoke to all of my key colleagues and said, look, you know, what do you think? And their words to me were, it sounds too good to be true. I couldn't let them see that I'm thinking, you're probably right. So I was still upbeat about it. And that's when I started to investigate on my own, the life cycle part. And I was seeing it for what it is. And in reality, I'm thinking, hang on a minute, this system's actually touching all of the right points. And that's how I started to investigate it a bit further.
And the team could start to see that as well, or you brought that information to them, like what overcame their sort of main resistance?
I think I got so giddy about it, and I said, look, we're going down this route. I think I was very kind of, you know, what were their thoughts, but because I knew it would work. Then I took a different approach and said, right, so this is how we're going to go about it. I got other people to read your book, and once they'd read it, they could understand exactly the bigger picture that I was looking at. And it only took one person to sort of come on board with me, and then all of a sudden, that person, I dedicated that person just to develop how we're going to work it. And as soon as people started seeing it working, then they were like, oh right, can I have a look at that podcast as well, and can I have a look at that book? And all of a sudden it was like a ripple effect. And that was it then. Once I knew that it would work and people would get on board, then there was no stopping us. And now I've got a brilliant team of staff, and they love life cycle.
There's an interesting metaphor about that sort of thing, which is like, if an owner wants to do something a little bit crazy, and their team think they're a bit mad, it's a bit like if you were to sit and watch this fox chasing a rabbit. It goes all through the woods and it bends its back trying to get over these logs, and it does all these crazy things. But like, you know, if you couldn't actually see the rabbit, you just think the fox was off its head. Right. So you've got to let the team see the rabbit.
That's it.
And that's what you did there. It was like, you know, you sort of you opened the rabbit hole for them and encouraged them to go down it. And then at the end, you could have a proper conversation rather than you coming in with all this information and them just going, no, it won't work because of this. And you constantly having to go, no, that's been covered.
And I didn't want to go down that route, because I thought, you know, if they buy in themselves, then it's going to work a lot easier for the company. And that's exactly what happened. They all bought in. And even now, you know, any new starters, they're like, wow, what how is it you all work? What is it you're all doing? And they're really interested in it. And it is different from any other agent, but that's how we work now.
One of the issues that companies have quite often, I've found when they go through some form of transformation, if you like, in the way that they work, is in an ideal world, the way that most people see new products and innovation, if you like, they can see the clear benefits of it, but they still want everything that they used to have.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like we want this change, but we don't want to change, and that can be it can actually almost be catastrophic for a company, because what they end up with is a system that you can't use like you used to use your old system.
Yeah.
So you can see the benefits of it, but you're constantly saying, yeah, but it can't do this and it can't do that. It's like, well, it's not supposed to do that.
Yeah.
You're trying to get it to do something it doesn't do.
Yeah.
Did you go through that in the beginning?
Massively. And we kept our old system going, and I'd look and I'm thinking, oh, why are you on that old system? And because this does it this way. And so in the end I said, right, well, we need to have a cut-off date. And that's what we did. We had a cut-off date. And now occasionally we need to refer back to that old system.
Yeah.
And the comments from people, it's like, how on earth did we ever love this system?
It's crazy, isn't it?
Weird,
when you think about it, because I've heard that many times. I've heard even from companies that have told me, like, I can't leave my old system because of X, Y, and Z. And they've, for whatever reason, have bitten the bullet and had that cut-off date. I've heard that story many times, whereby once they do that, there's then still a little bit of pain, but it probably lasts a few weeks, maybe a month, and then everyone is totally moved on. Yeah.
I think as well, if it's one person that's having a bit of a moan or a whinge, if the other people are saying, yeah, but it does this, or you can just do that to get around it, then all of a sudden it cuts them off straight away. And before you know it, everyone is on board. And so we didn't have that much of a resistance. Okay. We didn't have that much because we were all kind of thinking, yeah, let's do it. Let's be that different company that works a little bit different. Yeah. And it's paid off. Really, really has.
So now, how does the company work differently now compared with before?
Before we used to have people that were chasing the tails. So you've got 100 people to phone all 100. If you get one, great. If not, you don't. But we would actually factor in those hours into those people's roles. So staff-wise, it was my staff were higher, but they were doing stuff that really, it might work, it might not. Whereas now we're very focused now. So my account managers, my valuers, they can actually pinpoint everything, and the way they do it is really quite good as well, because they'll chat to them and they'll say, oh, what about this property? You came to mind when this has just come on the market, and they've said, well, actually I was looking at that. And so we use it like that, but that opens up so many conversations, Mark.
Because the person in the office can see they've been looking at it, and then the call isn't, I can see you've been looking at this. The call is like, oh, I thought you might be interested in this. And of course they're going to say, actually, I am quite interested in that. Yeah, that's, from a lean perspective, like you say, traditional estate agency is very manpower based, isn't it? You can't really expand without more people. Yeah. And you end up sort of getting a bigger and bigger and bigger company and making less and less profit. Yes,
that's exactly it. Yeah.
You start off with yourself, and you get to the stage where you're making quite good money, and you hire some help. And you get to the stage where everyone gets paid except you. Yeah,
exactly. And then we were at that point maybe, 2 years ago, and I thought, I've got too many staff, but they were all so busy, but they were busy doing not the stuff that I wanted them to do through no fault of their own.
Because absolutely, like you say, we have to call 100 people to get a good phone call. So I can't not call. I can't just make one good phone call. I wish I could. Yeah. But then suddenly you're in a position now whereby, okay, life cycle can tell you might want to speak to these 20 people, and you're not going to have 20 great phone calls, but the one good phone call is in there somewhere.
Is only out of 20, not 100. And it's just, I think from new staff's perspectives, they have to see it working, and then they're like, wow, and it works so well.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I was talking to a company the other day, And they originally asked me to go there to reinvigorate some of their team. They'd been using the system for a while, and the senior management loved it, but there was a few people in the team that were sort of like, oh, I'm not sure, and they was like, well, would you mind, having this conversation? Which is not something that I normally do, but I was going there anyway, and I said, okay. And I started having the conversation, and I only said probably about 3 things, and then another part of the team jumped in and were like, we never used the old system, and so we're not really sure what they're talking about.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense, and we love this.
Yeah, that's it. But that's the thing. When you got new staff, they're like, they don't know any different, and they love it.
And imagine if you then went to those new staff and said, right, we're moving to this new system, and you went to your old one, they'd be like,
why?
How am I supposed to know what to do here?
Yeah, exactly.
It's crazy, isn't it? So, okay, so, and then if there's an estate agent listening at the moment, let's say that I don't want this to turn into like a testimonial video about life cycle. So right, we've got it. System's great. You're working a different way. But what's the main benefit of that? I'm guessing you didn't just fire all of your team and reduce down to it just being you again. So you've still got people that work for you. So where is the tangible kind of benefit for someone who is where you were before you discovered life cycle and is thinking, there has to be a better way than this? If you were sitting with them now, not just, oh, you should go to life cycle, it's much smarter, you can use it easier, it's easier to see what you're doing. Yeah, but
it's the conversations, it's the vital conversations that you can have by using the life cycle system. It's those important conversations, and you can't buy that. You get on that phone, you know everything about them, and you can then open up and have a chat to them, and they've got to put that phone down and think, do you know what? And
when you say everything about them, remember, like, some of the people listening, they've never even seen life cycle. So what do you know about them more than, I don't know, when you were using your old system?
Well, you can see when they're on the website, you can see what they're looking at, which is so important, because if they're looking at a particular blog, then you can direct the journey, if you like, along to match that. And I feel like you can personalise it, although it is all done automatically. As long as you, at the beginning of their journey, you can sort of send it off on the right journey. It's perfect for them.
Yeah, so they'll receive a sequence of emails along that sort of angle of interest, if you like.
And I think you can do that using sort of a very manual way, but you can't keep on top of that.
No, it's not possible to stay on top of it. That's the funny thing, actually. Like, I'm due to speak at a conference tomorrow, actually, and one of the things I'm talking about there is this process of nurturing people.
Yeah.
And it does strike me as kind of crazy that most people understand it. They're trying to do it manually, and that's like, it's not possible. No. Like, it can only be done through software. It can only be done through a system, and there are systems that do it. You're wasting your time trying to figure it out manually.
Yeah.
Even a lot of the software that people are trying to use has an end point. Do you know what I mean? It's like, oh, we'll send these however many 4, 5, 6 emails for you. Like, there's an end point, and then what?
You can nurture it as long as you want, really, and that's the beauty of it. Yeah. So people will always have you in their mind.
Yeah. So let's put it into like a real world context. So I'm guessing it's maybe things like old valuations you've been on. In your previous way of working, you've got some sort of 1 to 31 system, or like then it goes into months and all of that sort of thing, and then you pull out the files, and there's a day whereby you just make random phone calls to random people about random stuff. Right? And guess what? No one answers the phone.
Yeah, that's it.
But you're working on output rather than outcome. You must make 100 phone calls, and if you do, then you've had a good day. And now you're working more on like, well, we're looking for a couple of listings.
Yeah.
I don't care how many phone calls you make.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And it's that whole, it's a mindset, I think. And it's hard as a business owner for me to all of a sudden say, right, don't chase your potential vendors. It's hard. And I felt uneasy about it, but I had to prove to myself that it was going to work. And it does.
Yeah, it is so hard. It is so hard because there's part of you that feels like you're not working hard enough.
Yeah.
And I guess that's the whole thing about working smart. I had a chat on a previous podcast with Peter Rollins, who was the CEO of Foxtons and now is in a leadership role at Foxtons, and we kind of disagreed on this in the sense that he was saying from this time till this time you make your phone calls, and I was saying to him like, okay, but what's my target? He said 10 viewings.
Yeah.
I said, what if I get my 10 viewings in the first 10 minutes? He said, keep calling and get more. And I was like, okay, but it doesn't work like that. Like, I need 2 hours to get 10 viewings if I'm going to phone random people.
Yeah.
Because there's only 10 in there, and it's going to take me 2 hours to find them. But if I can find them in 10 minutes, there's still only 10 in there.
Yeah. But I've got all this time free now.
I could do something else. And I think that's the bit that a lot of people they find it difficult to get their head around. They're like, well, do more. It's like, there is no more. There's no more to be done.
Yeah, and that is hard. That is hard. And especially when, your staff are saying, do you want me to chase some potential vendors? And I'm like, no. And you've got to really sort of ride it for a bit, and then eventually it will start happening. But we found now that the way we work our business is we can service our clients that are current clients with us, but we can also service the ones that are active on our database, and the outcome is a lot higher than if they were just sitting there phoning. Okay, I might have thought this is great because they're all dialing out, but actually it was just a waste of resource, really. I think once I'd got over the fact that no, don't chase them. Another hard part that I found was the valuers wanted to chase them. Because for them, I suppose it was
their job.
Their money, it's their job, it's their livelihood. And I had to, really go through it and say, look, don't chase them. It's fine.
It's like reinventing the rules for them somewhere, isn't it? Because like, if it's my job to get listings, and I think there's a lot of psychology behind this, in the sense that if it's my job to get sales, let's say, let's take it away from a estate agency. Sales in a estate agency, I'm referring to as getting a listing, right? Because there's only so much you can do to sell the house. But my job is to get houses on the market. Or if you're in another business, my sales might be selling software to people, right? If that's my job, then there's two things that may possibly make me lose my job. One of which is not hitting my targets, and the other one is not putting in any effort. So I can control the effort one, and then hopefully I get to keep my job if I don't hit my targets. But if I don't look like I'm putting in the effort and I don't hit my targets, then I'm probably going to get fired. So it's very hard. As a business owner, you have to rewrite the rules, don't you, and let people know you're safe here.
It's okay. And that was hard. That was hard for them to accept it even. It's like, right, okay. But then they would quickly realise, oh, but there's these people that are active. So I've done that bit of chasing. I can do this now.
And there's other work to be done.
Right?
There's like you say, there's speaking to current clients. Let's not lose our current clients. It's just as important as getting the new ones. And let's see where we can book extra viewings. Let's see where we can, I don't know, spend some time creating content to generate more leads, to have more people to see that are active. It's a whole massive mind shift. So that leads me on to my next point then, really, which is around the coaching side of things. Lots of people, they're not into coaching and training and all that enough to really know the difference between training and coaching. And as a business, we offer both sides of that, training and coaching. But I think as somebody that maybe comes to Iceberg originally, maybe when you first inquired, you wouldn't probably pay much attention to coaching. You just sort of consider that as like someone's going to show me how to use the system. The reason we brought it in was because of exactly what we've just spoken about. There's a whole load of mindset shift that's going to need to take place here.
Yeah.
We're not going to tell you how to do it, but you're going to probably want somebody to bounce some problems off of. So how's that coaching side of things been for you personally in terms of when you started with Iceberg, when maybe you thought it was great to start with, maybe you didn't, and over time?
I think for me it was great because as a business owner, you've got nobody really to sort of banter things about, throw ideas in. You've got nothing. You've kind of just got you. So there's so much you can tell your husband or what, but they don't really get it. So for me, it was a perfect sounding board, because the stuff that I've learned from the coaching that Rob does has been invaluable for me, and for me to sort of learn stuff that I never thought you would think about. And I'm like, wow, that's incredible. And there's never any rush, and he'll tell you, because it took a while. there's never any rush, and you can never do it wrong, but he will always kind of suggest different ways, and you think, do you know what, yeah, that's a fantastic idea. And I think just having that kind of sounding board reinforced what I was doing, which meant that I could then reinforce the staff.
Because otherwise, I guess you're on your own and you wonder, am I just mad?
Yeah.
Should I even bother? And it's quite difficult, isn't it? Because I've often said to people, sometimes you look at where your sort of goals are maybe, and you think, and they can seem a bit unrealistic.
Yeah.
And other people around you might tell you they're a bit unrealistic. But if you look backwards and think about where it was that you started from, the goal of getting to where you are now would have seemed a bit unrealistic, and that you're not qualified to get there.
Yeah.
And so the new normal isn't going to feel like the normal that you've got today. Otherwise, you're not going to get anywhere. And so there is going to be information you don't know at the moment, and things that you're not sure about. And doing that on your own is almost impossible. You know, you either need someone to talk to about it who can guide you, like a coach or a mentor or both. And also importantly, you need another group of people that are all going through the same thing to let you know you're not mental. Like,
exactly.
We've done this and it works.
Yeah.
And just before we came on the show, there's another one of our clients, Abigail, here, who you spoke to. I think you bounced some ideas off of her before.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's been other people. We have the WhatsApp group.
Yeah, that is amazing. That WhatsApp group.
And I think that hanging out with the right people is what I'm trying to say. That are going through what you're going through or have been through it makes a massive difference to you, rather than just sort of lurking around on your own in the dark.
Totally. And I think because of that group as well, you feel supported. Or if there's something you think, oh, that's a bit random, you just have to do a little search on it, and you can see that people have brought it up, and that's the route they went down. Even things like what's the best mic to use if you're doing videos. I might spend 3-4 hours trying to look into that, whereas you can just log on and somebody somewhere has said, oh, I've done all the research, it's this one and this one. It's fantastic.
Which is kind of unheard of in a estate agency, really, isn't it? And it was part of the vision of when we first set up Iceberg. Like, I've been through this journey myself in business, where I'd muddled through, had different businesses. Some had been good, some had been terrible. And then accidentally fell into this group of people that had all built phenomenal businesses and started telling me things where it was just like, what?
Yeah.
How does that work?
Yeah.
And then thought to myself, because I've always been aligned with a estate agency, thought to myself, I don't need to take this into a estate agency, because otherwise this industry is not going to survive.
Yeah.
And so the goal from the beginning was, everyone doesn't need to fight with each other. Weirdly, I know it might seem crazy, but even if you're on the same high street, it doesn't matter that much if you figure out who you exist for.
Yeah.
At the moment, estate agents exist for everybody, right?
Yeah.
I'm happy to take on, look, if it's 895 quid, I might as well take it on. It's better than nothing, but I'd love to charge 1.7%. And it's just like, which one is it?
Yeah.
It can't be both.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. That's why everyone hates each other, because they all want everything, which is not feasible.
Yeah.
And it would, in that community, it seems like even agents that are in the same town who have managed to create something whereby people are sharing. I mean, they're sharing their content with each other and saying, like, I use this.
Try this.
There was a guy there the other week, like, that was making videos for people. So it's kind of, the whole thing's an unusual way of working in an estate agency, I think.
I think, though, it really helps everybody, and I think that's why everyone's so they interact is because everyone helps everybody.
Yeah.
So there's no, you might put an idea in and everyone will be like, oh yeah, I was thinking that as well, or try this or try that. And I think that's half of it. You know, sometimes you think, oh, that sounds like a crazy idea, but it isn't.
Yeah.
But you need other people to kind of help you with that.
So just before we wrap it up then, I just try and think of somebody who's listening to the podcast. They're probably in the situation that you were in when you were back talking to your husband about, like, it's got to be a better way than this. What would you say to them?
I would say definitely get in touch with you. I say it doesn't happen overnight. It really doesn't, but it works. And that's all I can say. It absolutely works, but you have to have a lot of faith in the system. How
even without life cycle, like, okay, I mean, I think I'm a bit biased.
Yeah.
I think they should use life cycle, right? But let's forget life cycle for a minute. You've somehow managed to get a situation whereby you're much happier with your business today, I believe, I don't know, I might be wrong, than you were maybe even 2 years ago.
Yeah.
The software's made a big difference in the way that you work. The way you work today, as I was just saying before, you wouldn't have understood it 2 years ago. So, I don't know, is there anything that you would say to somebody just in terms of where do they start? I mean, I guess they've made a start because they're listening to this podcast, but where do you start with, like,
I think
change and the confidence to do it?
They need to want to change for a start. But there are agents that are quite happy just to carry on like it's always happened. But I think if you can get to a stage where you want to just be touching the right touch points, if you will, then it's definitely, you need to change your mindset. You need to also look at your systems that you've got now and think about, you know, technology. And I love technology, love it. And anything new, I'll always investigate it. And I think you need to kind of believe in your ideas, and you need some sort of software to help you along. But it takes time, but you've got to believe in it. Yeah. And I think for me, if I don't believe in something, I can't sell it.
Yeah. So even though a estate agency is tried and tested by all of these people over the last 40 years, it is possible to do it another way. And if they want to, then they should just follow
100%, 100%. But it works, and it works well. And it's freed up a lot of my time to do other things that is helping the business.
Yeah.
It's reduced my staff as well. It's reduced an actual complete role. So the account managers do their own brochures now because it's not a big effort now. Yeah. It's very simple. Yeah. So they do it.
Awesome. I love that. I was just going to ask you something there when you said about it's reduced down the time that you spent. So I guess those two things kind of tie together in the sense that most people start a business for, you know, they start the business for more freedom.
Yeah.
And then slowly you find yourself like a slave to money, clients, staff, and all of this stuff.
Yeah.
And then you haven't got the time to think about this stuff.
Yeah.
So putting these processes in place, a little bit more automation, working a little bit smarter, I guess that's quite an important key then, if that's allowed you a little bit more thinking time.
Massively.
Strategy, if you like. Yeah. Strategy time.
You can actually stop and think now, and you can think, right, well, I'm going to have a look at this, or I'm going to have a look at that. And I've changed quite a few different parts of the company's software over the last year or so, but it's allowed me to, because otherwise I'd be like, I can't do that because I'm running around like a headless chicken over this side. I've got no time for this side. So it's allowed me to streamline lots of areas of the company.
Do you feel like the future of the business is safer than it was before, or are you still?
I feel like it's safer because everybody knows what they're doing, and there's very little time wasting.
Yeah.
But equally, it's fun. Yeah. You know, we have a good time. We have a lot of laughs, because I think that's really important. But I think the actual core of the company, you can just get straight down to it. You don't have to ring 100 people to get one one call, you can just get right to the core. And so in that 15 minutes, you can do 2 amazing phone calls. And I think that's the key.
It's brilliant as well, isn't it? In terms of like if you do need to find new staff and that sort of thing, because, you know, traditionally part of estate agency training, if you like, has been how to have conversations with people that don't want to have conversations with you. You know, how to overcome those objections and turn it around. And that just all becomes a lot easier, doesn't it? When it's like, okay, so we've got this software. I can see here this person had a market appraisal from us. This is where they live. This is their house. This is what we valued it at. We haven't done much with them, but they've been receiving our newsletter for the last 18 months. And you can see here, they've just been reading this article about what to do if you're thinking about selling in 2024. So just give them a call and maybe just touching base, see what your plans are for 2024. Like, there's no special sales technique needed.
There's no secret to it. It's like, it's so straightforward. It's like, let's do it. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, thanks for ringing. Funny, I've just been on your website or whatever. And it's just the conversations they're just so good to have, as opposed to that conversation might be your 99th phone call. You're shattered by that point.
Absolutely. Just seeing what you want to do in 2024. Nothing.
Right, next that's one. What I mean. So it just...
You're almost apologetic when you're doing that, aren't you? Like, sorry to bother you. I just wanted to sit. So it kind of makes perfect sense, really. I was having a similar conversation yesterday with somebody, and we were talking. They were saying to me, you know, I know the type of people that I want to like sell my product to. I don't know how to find them and blah blah. I was like, who's the type of person you want to sell your product to? And they made up this imaginary person, and I was saying like, no, that's not the person. Tell me who's your perfect customer you've got right now. And it turned out that their perfect customer was somebody who is literally the perfect customers they've got are all between 45 and 55. They're all at this certain point in their business whereby they've had the business probably more than 10 years and they're financially secure. They're not bothered about saving every penny. They just don't want to have to do some of these jobs themselves and all of this sort of stuff. And I said, okay, so imagine if you put an advert out there that said to that demographic of people that said, if you're between 45 and 55 and you know, you've got an established business whereby, you know, you're not necessarily looking to save money, but you want someone to do a professional job for you, and you're in this position, we can do this for you. Guess who you're going to get inquiries from? And that makes perfect sense, right? But for some reason in business, we struggle with that. We want everything. It's like the magic's out there somewhere. Let's just go find it. And it gets draining to the point whereby you're no longer even saying that, you're just apologetically phoning random people to say I made my calls.
It's soul destroying. It's draining, and it's you could have had a great conversation at 1 o'clock, but because you've been ringing since 9, you're shattered, and you think, do you know what? I'll ring you another time. And now the conversations we have, everyone's upbeat about them because they know
if I can get through to this guy,
it's the right sort of conversation. And I mean, we get a lot of people calling us to come on the market with us because we're speaking to people about a house they might like to view, and they go, well, if you're doing that for me as a buyer, imagine what you're going to do if it was my house.
Absolutely.
And that was accidental. We didn't.
Absolutely. And then once you actually get to show them the systems that you use, and it all click into place for them. I had an example the other day whereby, like, you know, I'm involved with this high-end estate agency sort of license model, if you like, called By Design. We supply the software to them, and I was just looking in the system, and I noticed in one of the accounts there was this guy who had been reading some sort of article. I can't remember what the title was, but it was a title that meant he's thinking about selling his house. The blog title was something along the lines of, like, you know, 3 things that you should be doing if you're thinking about selling, something like that. And I went and looked at his profile, and he hadn't had a market appraisal, but he'd had a lot of interaction with the website. So I took his address and I put it into Google, and his house was last sold something like 6 years ago, and it was last sold for 2 million quid. And I said to the person who owns that license, like, you should be looking at this. You should contact that guy. And then I spoke to him a couple of weeks ago, and he's just booked a valuation and he's on his way out there. It's like, how mental is that? but you've got to slow down to speed up, haven't you? We're not doing 100 phone calls.
Yeah.
You know, people often say, oh, I don't understand. Why is the telephone number not on this list?
Yeah.
Because you're not supposed to be randomly calling them.
Yeah,
you're supposed to be going into the profile and having a read,
having a look and
seeing if there's a reason to call them.
Yeah.
Not just randomly calling.
They're not really that interested.
That's right.
But
crazy. All right. Okay, that's perfect. If there's anybody that's listening that thinks to themselves, oh, I've got something I wanted to ask Louise. I think you're a member of the Estate and CX Facebook group.
Yes, I am.
So if they're in there or if they join that, then you're happy for people to
more than happy,
reach out to you?
More than happy. Or have a chat on the phone.
Awesome. Brilliant.
Yeah, brilliant.
Thanks very much for coming in.
You're welcome. Thank you for asking.
Thanks for listening to this Estate and CX podcast. Can you make sure that you're actually subscribed to this podcast channel if you liked the content? It helps us massively to get better guests, and it just helps us generally. So you might think you're subscribed, but just have a double check, whatever your podcast platform of preference is, that you're actually subscribed. And then that way we can continue to grow the channel and get better and better guests for you.